Where are the hostages? What about eradicating Hamas? And now what about, through coercion, bringing their civilian population to northern Israel back? There is no...
I mean, most Hezbollah's leadership is fucking gone, bro.
Is very dangerous.
The methodology they used with those explosive devices was extraordinarily precise and successful.
Then how were civilians killed and why were they?
There were, I think, like 2 or 3 people I've heard now say this. If this attack was discriminate, why did it kill civilians? Does an attack have to be perfect for it to not be indiscriminate? Does an attack have to kill 0 civilians for it to be discriminate?
Well, I think at some point down the line we will need to address this unconventional situation. But Israel, frankly, for decades.
Oh my God, is he allergic to answering questions? If he answers a question directly, is he gonna go into anaphylactic shock? He's literally doing the thing of like of just like obfuscating, like, oh, do you support abortion at 9 months? Well, personally, I wouldn't do it. That's not what I asked you. Like, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support the channel, and I'll make sure to reply. A war crime by all means, Israel versus Hezbollah debate featuring, I don't know who any of these people are, so it should be interesting.
First of all, the Saudi ambassador to the UK warned earlier this week the Middle East is the closest it has been to regional war in 50 years. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think he couldn't be more accurate.
Probably.
What we're seeing is another episode of what looks like the Gaza 2.0 war. We're witnessing the same Israeli toolkit.
Thanks for the follow, Zibuzi. Welcome to the stream.
Of terror, playbook of threats and
he's a fucking bot. Damn it.
And carpet bombing for a whole country and civilians being slaughtered. Of course, conflicts in the region are very contagious, so the risk for a regional spillover exists. That's why we hope at the earliest to curb this trend and reverse it and find a peaceful settlement.
There are reports, just before we started this interview, that America is pushing hard to try and get a pause in hostilities between Israel and Hezbollah. What do you know about that? Is that likely, do you think?
I think there are extensive efforts being deployed, especially that the ingredients are there. We have a security council.
I think didn't Israel reject that because it wasn't Lebanon or Hezbollah asking for the end of the fucking Gaza war, and they don't think they'll be able to get a ceasefire in Gaza until later. I think the U.S. said we're not getting one until at least after Biden's term ends.
The resolution that is governing the situation in South Lebanon, and that worked well from 2006 up until 2023. So we've always said that we would be ready to put this resolution at the table and discover the different tracks of this resolution and find a settlement that addresses all concerns, because we also have our concerns. We have our civilians that are displaced from South Lebanon. And now an extra layer of complexity has been added with this terrorist blank bombing of Lebanon. It's exactly the same playbook that was used in Gaza.
What Israel would say, I know because I've heard them say it, is that the difference here is that on October the 7th last year, Hamas launched an unprecedented terror attack on Israel, which they had to defend against. And that Hezbollah responded within hours by launching yet more rockets towards Israel.
Launching indiscriminate rockets.
19,000 is estimated to have come over from Hezbollah at Israel. And Israel said, what are we supposed to do? This is a group of terrorists,
I would say so, avocado, probably,
are wedded in their initial charter to the destruction of Israel. And they're proving that every day with the rockets they fire. At some point, we have to do what we're now doing. What do you say to that?
Well, what Hezbollah tried to do on October the 8th, regardless of whether you and I or others might agree or disagree with, is to engage in
the Gaza genocide
in order to tilt the cost-profit equation for the Israelis and push them to accept a ceasefire or hold them back on Gaza. There is no moral equivalence between what Hezbollah did and carpeting a whole country and killing civilians. Name me one single...
Why do you keep saying the carpet bombing?
Is that not more by chance? In the sense, if it wasn't for Israel's very effective Iron Dome, many of those rockets Hezbollah were firing may have got through and killed many more civilians. It just happens that Israel has a better defense system than Hezbollah does. You don't accept that?
True.
Wanting to justify or defend this behavior, but Hezbollah is very careful to target only military targets because it's clear.
Really? Are they? I don't know how careful they are. I think they're probably more discriminate than Hamas, but I don't think I don't know if they have any real moral objection to killing civilians.
No one in Lebanon, including Hezbollah.
Doesn't Hezbollah also use unguided rockets? They also have like guided rockets, but Hezbollah, unguided rocket. I'm pretty sure they also use unguided rockets if they don't have great control over where they go.
Hezbollah does not want a full-scale
More
war.
power,
they have been very calibrated, regardless of whether we agree or disagree. Some Lebanese do, some Lebanese do not. But we, as a Lebanese government, do not want this war. We think that there is a diplomatic way to address all concerns. But what the Israelis are doing lacks any strategy. All their war aims, whether in Gaza and now in Lebanon, have not been met by coercion. Where are the hostages? What about eradicating Hamas? And now what about through coercion bringing their civilian population to northern Israel back? There is no...
I mean, most Hezbollah's leadership is fucking gone, bro. They haven't been able to bring the population back to northern Israel yet, but like, it seems like they're already making a headway on that goal. Where are the hostages? I mean, like, Israel has rescued some hostages. Obviously, I think there are still, like 111, 64 of which I think are alive. Like, the hostages are fucking handcuffed to Sinwar so Israel doesn't bomb them. Like, that's where the hostages are. Like, but Israel has had some success in releasing the hostages. They have done a few rescue missions that released some. Yeah, Hamas's military capacity is like pretty strongly diminished at this point. Again, like I'm pretty sure what U.S. intelligence said is that by now it's just a game of whack-a-mole of like wherever Hamas reconstitutes itself, or Hamas or other military organizations, it's a game of whack-a-mole trying to break them up wherever they reconstitute themselves.
No way these objectives could be achieved other than by diplomatic ways.
Some people have said that what Israel did last week in letting off explosive devices on all these pages and walkie-talkies and so on, directly targeting 3,000 members of Hezbollah, albeit killing some civilians in the process, but predominantly targeting successfully members of Hezbollah with explosive devices in these devices they had. Some people say that was a legitimate attack on enemy combatants. Others have called it an act of terrorism. What do you call it?
Well, there are reference authorities, and we don't live in vacuum. There are reference authorities in the world. I refer you to the statement by the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, who described it as war crime, because when you detonate an electronic device without prior knowledge at the time of the attack of who is in possession of that device and what is in its vicinity or
they sold them to Hezbollah's military wing. It's reasonable to assume that they are going to be in possession of Hezbollah militants. And also, at least according to one report from Channel 12, which quotes like anonymous sources from Israel, I think they said from foreign intelligence source or whatever, Israel did have knowledge. Each device like had its own serial number, and Israel could choose which ones to detonate, and they detonated them based on how likely they thought that they were within the hands of Hezbollah militants. Like Israel's intelligence on Hezbollah is so comprehensive. Like
surrounding, that's indiscriminate and simultaneous targeting of
oh my god, that's indiscriminate.
And also a war crime. So it is established, and the proof is we had explosives who just exploded in supermarkets and pharmacies and hospitals. Is this illegitimate?
That makes it indiscriminate. I want to get the exact 3 things that indiscriminate attacks can mean. Under Article 51, Section 4 of Additional Protocol 1, indiscriminate attacks are prohibited and defined as such. A. Those which are not directed at a specific military objective. These were pretty clearly directed specifically at Hezbollah militants. B. Those which employ a method or means of combat which cannot be directed at a specific military objective. This would be things like, like cluster bombs, which can't be specifically aimed at a military objective. Clearly, in principle, remote detonated explosives can be aimed or can be targeted to only militants. And clearly, in this case, they really were only targeted towards militants. But this just has to do with, in principle, can the weapon used be directed at only militants? Which it seems like in this case is yes, regardless of even if they were. C is proportionality. Those which employ a method or means of combat, the effects of which cannot be limited as required by this protocol. This is basically if it would be expected to cause disproportionate attack. Article 51, Section 5 further clarifies an indiscriminate attack is an attack which by bombardment by any methods and means can be treated, which treats a single military objective as a single military objective, a number of clearly separated or distinct military objectives located in town, city, village, or other area containing a similar concentration of civilians and civilian objects. So this would basically be like carpet bombing. You're treating multiple separate military objects as one distinct military objective and just carpet bombing the entire city to attack all of them at once. That would be indiscriminate. You could argue these same things apply with like some of the rocket attacks that coming from Hamas. B, an attack which may be, this is proportionality, an attack which may be expected to cause incidental loss of civilian life, injury to damage to civilian objects, or a combination thereof, which would be excessive in retaliation to direct and concrete military gain or military advantage anticipated. I would say clearly it does not satisfy the proportionality requirement because it's pretty reasonable to expect that small remote detonated explosives given only to Hezbollah militants are probably going to harm mostly Hezbollah militants and probably not many people outside of that. So I don't think it would satisfy this proportionality thing. I think it's pretty clear that it doesn't satisfy any of these either. These were clearly directed at specifically Hezbollah militants. Like, these guys don't understand the terms they use. It's just to stir up an emotional response out of people. I think it is. I think so. Yeah. Ruling against indiscriminate attacks is considered customary international law. But yeah, so technically this is quoting additional protocol 1, which only applies to international armed conflicts. And there's debate over whether or not the Gaza-Israel conflict and the Hezbollah-Israel conflict are international or non-international in nature. But regardless, these reflect customary international law, which means they apply in all situations, regardless of whether it's national or international in nature. But again, there is debate over whether they're international or non-international.
Ultimate warfare tactic?
What they would say, and what Israel supporters say, is that if Hezbollah perpetually fires rockets at Israel and tries to kill people in a very indiscriminate way, you say targeted, they say indiscriminate, it's only the good fortune of the success of the Iron Dome to stop so many more civilians being killed, that if Hezbollah places its membership amongst the civilian population, you're never going to be able to avoid civilian casualties if you go after them. But that actually the methodology they used with those explosive devices was extraordinarily precise and successful.
Then how were civilians killed and why were they killed? And this Israeli rationale is very dangerous.
The methodology they used with those explosive devices was extraordinarily precise and successful.
Then how were civilians killed and why were they?
There were I think like 2 or 3 people I've heard now say this. If this attack was discriminate, why did it kill civilians? Does an attack have to be perfect for it to not be indiscriminate? Does an attack have to kill 0 civilians for it to be discriminate? If an attack kills 100 militants and 1 civilian, is that an indiscriminate attack?
They killed them. And this Israeli rationale is very dangerous because it justifies killing civilians. In international law, the utmost.
And now I don't understand. We can't let people get away with this anymore. I can't believe you're justifying killing civilians. This rationale justifies killing civilians. First of all, just under IHL, like you can absolutely be justified in killing civilians. It's not a war crime. It's not even a war crime to intentionally kill civilians. It's a war crime to purposefully target civilians. It's not a war crime it's not like necessarily even immoral or unjustified to intentionally kill civilians. It can absolutely be justified to intentionally kill civilians. You could very easily imagine a hypothetical. Let's say literally 99 Hamas militants are in a room with 1 civilian. And let's say in this hypothetical that those Hamas militants are planning an attack on Israel. Absolutely, it's justified to kill that civilian if it means as collateral damage. If it means also killing all those Hamas militants. Like, are you fucking kidding me, dude? Like, oh my god, it's just like. But you can just like intuition pump so hard by saying, I can't believe you're justifying killing civilians. Can't believe you're justifying killing children. You're justifying killing children. You're justifying killing children. Justify killing. I feel like the intention is not to kill civilians, though. Well, okay, the intent has multiple different layers. It's possible to intentionally kill civilians and not have it be a war crime if you're acting with a dullest, indirect level of intent. If you're acting with knowledge, if you're doing an airstrike and this airstrike is going to kill 6 militants and 1 civilian, on some level you are intentionally killing that civilian. You know that civilian's going to die. However, you're acting with a dullest, indirectest level of intent. You're doing it knowingly rather than purposefully. Your purpose is not to kill the civilians. Your purpose is to kill the militant, and you just know that you're going to have to kill the civilian in order to kill those militants. Or in other words, you're not targeting the civilian. You're targeting the militants, and the civilian is collateral damage. The object of the attack is the militants, and it's just incidental that the civilian dies. The object of the attack is the militants. That's the difference there.
Most priority is to protect.
I guess true that I associate with intent and purpose. Yeah, it's dumb. Technically, you can also act with a dolus eventialis level of intent, in which case you're acting recklessly. You know, I mean, you could say like carpet bombing can have this level of intent. I mean, I guess with carpet bombing, maybe you can, with an inherently indiscriminate attack, you can actually argue that you're acting with a purposeful level of intent. But like you can also act recklessly. You can do an attack recklessly enough that you're acting with a dolus eventialis level of intent, where you're not knowingly killing civilians, but you're behaving recklessly in a way that kills
civilians, and no other war aim justifies killing.
Do you know how many of those
being abused? The strikes are people use indiscriminate wrong and they abuse it. People use proportionality wrong and they abuse it. Like.
Targeted were Hezbollah.
There's this I really like this paper, Targeting and the Concept of Intent. It's like a 50-page paper. I think it's a little less, but it goes over the stuff really well, I think.
And how many was genuine civilians?
I'm not aware, but I'm aware that many civilians having nothing to do with Hezbollah and that's not associated with Hezbollah have lost their lives or lost their sight or were having.
I think 3 or 4 civilians lost their lives. More were injured.
Wounded. So it's a war crime by all means. And beyond that, I think
how explain how the steel man here is the booby trap thing, which might get brought up later, but there's even exceptions for booby traps, and then it's debatable whether this even is a booby trap. But I don't know. I don't want to debate whether it is a booby trap or not, because me and Isaac and Sample debated that and we got so dragged down.
What Hezbollah is doing with the rocket firing, is that a war crime then?
Well,
if any I put the argument back to you. If any civilians get hit by rocket fire from Hezbollah, does that make it a war crime? What they're doing?
Well, it's not about approving or disapproving this modus operandi.
Well, you disapproved of Israel.
Can he answer the question?
What I'm saying is that we have to go to the root causes. The root causes.
Wait, no, please make him answer the question. If Hezbollah kills someone with their rocket fire, a civilian with their rocket fire, is that a war crime?
Is what Israel have been doing in Gaza, and the root causes is decade-long behavior against Lebanon that has led to what Hezbollah is today. We have to stop dealing with the symptoms and for once start dealing with the root causes. The root causes being Israeli occupation, the root causes being Israeli denial of statehood for the Palestinians, the root causes being 22 years of Israeli occupation to Lebanon and continuous occupation of parts of Lebanese territory. So we need to address that and stop scapegoating groups here and there and stop scapegoating the world. If it's not Hezbollah, then it's Hamas. If it's not Hamas, then it's the United Nations, bashing the United Nations.
I mean, Bubby, like, on one side, yeah, I hope that happens. On the other side, I don't want another like Christian versus Muslim Lebanon civil war. That'd probably just make things worse. I want Hezbollah gone, but like I don't know if that's necessarily the best scenario. But
so we need to address that and stop scapegoating groups here and there and stop scapegoating the world. If it's not Hezbollah, then it's Hamas. If it's not Hamas, then it's the United Nations, bashing the United Nations. If it's not the United Nations, then bashing the UK government, because the UK government enforced an arms sale ban on some arms to Israel. This paranoid behavior needs to stop, and once for all we should address the root causes of the problems in our region, which is occupation, which is the lack of implementation of Security Council resolution. That is the roadmap. Otherwise,
Hezbollah has also ignored that Security Council. I don't know what specific Security Council resolution he's referencing here, considering he just said occupation, which makes me think he might be referencing UN Security Council Resolution 242, which is probably not legally binding and also probably does not require the end of the occupation in the West Bank. Because it just says territories occupied, not the territories occupied, meaning it probably doesn't mean all of the territories occupied. In fact, the draft of the resolution intentionally didn't want Israel to withdraw back to from all the territories occupied. So the resolution arguably fulfilled when Israel gave up the Sinai Peninsula for peace with Egypt, and it also ties the end of the occupation to Arab recognition of Israel. And considering people don't seem to be willing to do that, then it kind of makes sense that regardless. Okay. What was the other thing?
Which is the lack of implementation of Security Council resolution.
Security Council Resolution 1700 something. SC UN Security Council. 1701, which I don't believe Hezbollah has implemented either.
That is the roadmap. Otherwise, we shouldn't be surprised that people are taking things in their hands. When law is not enforced, people will start in the street. If you don't enforce law, people will start taking things in their hands. And that's what we're seeing. It's not about approving or disapproving these models, but we need to understand them in order to deal with them. Coercion and violence will lead nowhere, and violence begets violence. And I think we have a current Israeli government which finds its interest in putting its country in a continual state of war. as a way to turn off all the risks that are inside the coalition, or as a way to keep the coalition in office. Because the moment they stop, they would fall. They would start facing accountability for not being able to achieve their objective. Where are the hostages? What about eradicating Hamas? What about severing Hezbollah? Hezbollah will retaliate.
I mean, Hamas's military capability has been severely diminished already. Hezbollah's military capacity has probably also been severely diminished. Most of their leadership is fucking dead. And a lot of the hostages have been released and or killed at this point. But
and we will engage in this race to the bottom. That's why we should stop it. We should go back to United Nations. We have this 1701 Security Council resolution. We have always said in the Lebanese government, we are ready to look into it and address all concerns. But it's falling on deaf ears in Israel. Frankly, Piers, it's a...
We've always said we're willing to look into it. I'm pretty sure, I don't know specifically if this Security Council resolution is binding, but like if it's a UN Security Council resolution that is binding, then like I don't think it's your choice of whether or not you get to look into it. I think it's you're kind of fucked. You kind of have to do it. Like
warmongering government.
You're very condemnatory of Israel, and I understand that. Are you as condemnatory?
We'll check it out. Yeah.
Perpetrated by Hezbollah?
Hezbollah did not start this violence, Piers. As I said, we have to go back to the root causes.
Oh my God!
You can say they didn't start it in your.
Can he please answer the question whether he thinks if Hezbollah launches rockets and that kills a civilian, is that a war crime? I'm very curious for his answer for that.
In your
no, it's a mixed statement of fact.
But you can still condemn the violence, can't you?
Well, I condemn any violence in general, but Hezbollah did not start this fight.
But you do condemn Hezbollah's violence.
He did not resort to violence. Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese social fabric. Hezbollah is part of the Lebanese social fabric. Right. They have their modus operandi. Some in Lebanon agree with it, some disagree.
But what do you think?
Well, I think at some point down the line, we will need to address this unconventional situation. But Israel, frankly, for decades...
Oh my God. Is he allergic to answering questions? If he answers a question directly, is he going to go into an anaphylactic shock? He's literally doing the thing of like, of just like obfuscating, like, oh, do you support abortion at 9 months? Well, personally, I wouldn't do it. That's not what I asked you. Like, oh my God. And then like, and then it's like, yeah, oh, well, I mean, I'm asking you I'm not asking you personally. I'm asking like, would you support on like a policy level? Well, what I think we really need to do is address the root causes of why women need abortions in first. Like, he's literally, oh my God.
AIDS now has not been giving us a serene moment to address this unconventional situation.
What is your biggest...
If Israel think that this is an anomaly, how about having a prime minister that is accused of war crimes in charge on our borders? One anomaly leads to...
I mean... accused of war crimes, so is Hamas. Like, Hamas was also, the ICC also indicted Hamas leaders.
Another anomaly. If you think Hezbollah is an anomaly, then, well, you have to look at other anomalies.
Is your biggest fear...
Actually, was that warrant ever even approved? I remember the ICC was seeking a warrant, but it had to be approved by a 3-judge panel. I don't even know if it was ever approved.
The ground war, Israel's army chief, as we've been talking, says latest strikes on Lebanon are in preparation for the possible entry of troops.
I hope wisdom prevails. I hope diplomatic efforts that are being deployed now in New York and elsewhere...
It's still pending.
...manage to defuse the situation. As I said, we don't want this war, but we will not shy away from defending ourselves.
But if there is a ground invasion by Israel and its forces,
well,
how bad could that get very quickly?
It would be extremely bad and tragic, of course, for Lebanon and for the whole region. We already have on our conscience, the world has on its conscience, the Gaza. We don't need another Gaza in Lebanon. So before it's too late,
when people say another Gaza in Lebanon, what do they think is going to happen? I'm so confused.
Stop the Israelis. These wishy-washy...
Do they think there's going to be another... Do they think it's going to be genocide in Lebanon? Is that what they think is going to happen? Is Lebanon also going to be an open-air prison?
Positions do not do the job anymore. Israel should be stopped doing what it is currently embarked in. That's very dangerous for Lebanon, of course, but for the whole region and beyond. We've all seen the repercussions of the Gaza war in London, Paris, and other capitals. We don't want this vicious cycle to keep on repeating itself. And it all has to do with the Israeli government, frankly. From our side, and by our side, I mean everybody in Lebanon, we would be ready to look into a diplomatic solution. And we would be ready to engage. And we need the ceasefire in Gaza. That's of utmost importance. But the Israelis have been trying to diffuse the pressure on them to conclude this ceasefire in Gaza through opening another front with Lebanon. And this targets American efforts. When Secretary Blinken was in the region, they launched this cyber attack against Lebanon. So it's clear that they're trying to undermine American efforts to conclude a ceasefire in Gaza.
I mean, that part is probably half true.
Well, let's debate all that now with my panel, the host of Democracy-ish podcast, Wajahat Ali, the Israel Special Envoy for Trade and Innovation, Fleur Hasan, Iranian-American attorney and activist Elica Le Bon, and from the Grey Zone, the journalist Aaron Maté. Well, welcome to all of you. Fleur Hasan, whom I just spoke there to the ambassador of Lebanon, extremely concerned about what is happening, and in particular, this breaking news from Israel's army chief that these strikes on Lebanon.
Can they get loaner box on these panels, dude? Why do they get the worst people on like both sides? They get like the most like ultra like Zionist people for Israel, and they get like the most cringe like pro-Palestinian people as well. Like why are they getting like the most cringe people for these panels? It's just infuriating.
Are in preparation for the possible entry of troops. Is it really a sensible move by Israel to consider another ground war, given what has been going on in Gaza for the past year?
Or was it a sensible move on the 8th of October to start a war from Lebanon into Israel, evacuating 100,000 Israelis who don't live anywhere near 10 kilometers from the border? Why did they start that? There's no territorial claim. What was the point of that? Maybe, and this is what the ambassador, of course, didn't mention,
that's true.
Maybe they're all really the servants of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and they're doing the bidding for them. But what's happening at the moment is actually something very curious, and that is that the Islamic Republic of Iran is currently in a charm offensive in New York, and at the same time throwing Hezbollah under the bus for a war that it probably asked them to do in order to help their friend Yahya Sinwar. So the point is this: is Israel supposed to be attacked and not defend itself? Is Israel supposed to go for a ceasefire after its people, its women have been raped, its children have been burnt, and a war has started against them? We've been in this story since 1948, when we were attacked by all the countries around Israel. Today, that has been replaced.
See, now we're doing like she's not. I mean, both sides do this. They're not like entirely wrong, but I just hate. They both just get like the worst people who do like the like stupid moral like intuition pumping. The Jew Christ, that's huge. Oh, welcome, Hasan. Yep. Oh my God.
With Islamic Republic, proxies, and militias. And this is where we find ourselves. Do we want war? No. We want peace. We're not in Lebanon. He's talking about UN. He's talking about resolutions. It's very simple. If he wants this all to stop, it's very, very simple. Just comply with Resolution 1701, which says very simply this: Hezbollah has to go behind north of the Litani River, and there's not supposed to be any armed terrorist south of the Litani River, and it's all over. The question is not to me. The question is why on the 8th of October, Hezbollah decided to start throwing what is now almost 10,000 missiles into Israel. If the UK, if in Dover, France threw 10,000 missiles from Calais, Piers, what would happen?
Well, I think we would certainly robustly defend ourselves. Let me go to Wajahat Ali for your response there to what Fleur Hasan was saying and what the ambassador was saying, because clearly there are very strong opinions on both sides here. There have been for the last year. What do you believe is likely to happen next, and what do you think of what is happening?
Yeah, so I think we all agree that nothing justifies the war crimes and terrorism that was done on October 7th, but to Israel, October 7th justifies war crimes and terrorism all around the world.
It's the same.
Israel sounds like Dr. Strange.
Yeah, of course I condemn Hamas killing 800 civilians, but that gives Israel the right to kill 40,000 civilians. I'm morally superior.
It sounds like a manic, violent creature right now that has said, this is their quote, "We want de-escalation through escalation." That's like saying no fighting in the war room. That's like saying we will bomb them in order to save them. That's like saying we will find life in death. Israel has already invaded Lebanon in 1982. 15 to 20,000 people were killed, mostly civilians. It wanted to weaken the PLO. You know what happened as a result of that? The PLO was weakened, but something called Hezbollah rose. Then Hamas rose. 2006, Israel and Lebanon had a war. Many civilians were killed. It was a stalemate. Now,
what a horrible way to frame that. Many civilians were killed. I don't know if the God damn it. Oops. I don't know if the 1980 Lebanon war is here, or 1982, but like the relative risk ratio of the 2000 Lebanon war is 103, right? This is unbelievable. Like, a lot of civilians died. This is like an unbelievably discriminate war. Like, they were unbelievably discriminate towards targeting militants in the 2006 war, at least. Is the 1980 Lebanon? Yeah, 1982. The relative risk for this one is lower. It's at 7. 7 is pretty low. 7 is relatively low. But the 2006 war, many civilians died. 103 relative risk ratio. Jesus. 7 is pretty low, though.
Almost a year into the October 7th war and the Gaza war since then, 41,000 Palestinians have been killed, mostly children, Piers, in Gaza. More children have been killed in Gaza than in all the war zones combined in the past 2 years. Israel right now is bombing Lebanon. 27,000 people have been displaced, over 2,000 people injured, over 500 people killed, 50 children killed. To Israel right now, everyone is an enemy. Everyone is Hezbollah. Everyone is Hamas, right?
Does he think that, like, just because children have died, like, that makes them the target of the attack?
Nurses are killed, refugee camps are killed. I've been talking on your show for the past year. Each time I come on, there's a fresh new horror, right? Israel, Palestinians go to the south. You got Palestinians, the refugee camps. They're bombed. Children are bombed. Journalists are...
Why are refugee camps being bombed? Why?
Bombed. Leon Panetta, who was the former CIA director, has said what Israel did in Lebanon, specifically booby-trapping the phones, is an act of terrorism. That's Leon Panetta.
Well, if he said it, that's the same thing that PPG quoted at me when I asked him about it.
United Nations Commission on Human Rights said that same action was a violation of international law. I want to quote him.
Can you provide the argument? Please provide the argument.
Said it is a war crime to commit violence.
What is this? Collateral damage that exists. Israel's using baby targeting technology
to be harmless.
Can I build a tank and stream from inside of it? If I don't put any big exploding thing in the antenna thing, whatever the fuck you...
Antenna. I think to answer this question, I'm pretty sure you can. You can own a tank in the U.S. as long as it's decommissioned and you don't and it doesn't have the ability to shoot anymore from the antenna. I added barrel. Is that what it's called? Barrel, tank barrel. Even it's a violation, it's pretty cool. Yeah, I know. You don't. The true position, the enlightened position here is that even if it is a violation of the booby trap thing, it's probably still preferable to the alternative of airstrikes, right? We could imagine, like, it was probably a utility maxing war crime. Like, I'm not against war crimes. In what's the word? Intrinsically. I'm not intrinsically against war crimes. The reason I'm against war crimes is because war crimes typically have worse outcomes than other types of attacks, right? Like, the war crimes are typically like indiscriminate, or war crimes are typically, targeting civilians. If something is a war crime, but still has like utility maximizing outcomes, then if we had the cluster bomb that would end all wars forever, then who really cares if it's a war crime? It's simply morally justified.
Violence intended to spread terror among civilians.
Now, I actually do think IHL provides a really good framework for moral analysis of wars. I actually think the moral framework behind IHL is pretty good, but.
So the question for me is, when will the world and when will the United States say enough? It's clear, Piers, that Benjamin Netanyahu does not care about the hostages. Don't take my word for it. Who are the people protesting Benjamin Netanyahu? The family members of the Israeli hostages in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. This is a recipe for madness, Piers, for madness. It's a one-year anniversary. Netanyahu wants to escape accountability. He wants to escape the inquiry, asking, how come you didn't stop the war, which, by the way, you knew was going to...
I mean, I don't think it's entirely wrong here. Yeah, I think the hostages are kind of the secondary objective, obviously. I can see both sides of it, right? Like, if I was the family member of an Israeli hostage, and yeah, I would probably want a ceasefire to get my fucking family member back. But also, if I'm not the family member of a hostage, then I probably want to focus on a long term, and probably want to, diminish Hamas's military capacity as much as possible, rather than focusing on the short term of getting hostages back, potentially facing another October 7th, 50 years from now, 10 years from now, whatever.
Happen. You knew the attack was going to happen, but he was too busy with his corruption charges. He needs to stay in power to avoid from resigning and possibly going to jail. And also, a perpetual war will help the supremacists in his cabinet, like Ben Gvir, who literally is like the member of the KKK, who now is the national security minister, and people like Smotrich, who have openly said, Piers, that they have a genocidal plan. They want everything, river to the sea, and to push out Palestinians. So I condemn. I'll do this for you, Piers. I condemn the war crimes. I condemn Hezbollah launching rockets. That's a war crime. I condemn Hamas.
But I also condemn Israel's war crimes.
The occupation, Israel's killing of civilians, and the war crimes it is committing in Gaza and in Lebanon. I leave it to the panel.
Well, let me ask Elica Le Bon.
Yeah, it's all just count the dead bodies, and whoever has more dead bodies is worse.
Do you condemn that?
I condemn everything that has been caused by the jihadists, and this is not my opinion. This is based on causal reasoning. You kidnap people and you take them to a different place. What
I didn't know that.
option does a sovereign nation have but to return its
adorable.
citizens? Well, there's only two options here, right? You either release the hostages or they have to come and be rescued. So the fact that Hamas has suddenly refused to return these hostages means that Israel has no other choice. And so what you're looking at here is Hamas persistently putting the Palestinian people in a position to be slaughtered in this way. And you know what else that's so much worse than that? When people keep coming up with these numbers, 41,000 people killed. Why? Why are 41,000 people killed? Okay. Why is it not that 41,000 people in Israel have been killed despite all of these attacks? Because Israel invests in protecting its citizens. What does Hamas do? Hamas starts a war and then hides in its terror tunnels, okay, and leaves its civilians, its children vulnerable above the ground.
It's the Iranian baddie.
Cowards hiding in tunnels. So yes, I agree, 41,000 is an awful number. First of all, we haven't separated the combatants, but we know that children have been killed, and the children have been killed because of Hamas. Everybody that is being killed is because of jihadists, and there is not one fact that you can make that doesn't start with the jihadists. And when the jihadists bury themselves wherever they are, whether they're in Lebanon, whether they're in Gaza, whether they're in Iran, whether they're in Syria, they are making the people of that nation, the people they are burying themselves amongst, vulnerable to being killed in this way. So yes, I absolutely condemn those deaths, and I absolutely blame the jihadists for that. And first of all, to go back to this claim that Hezbollah never started this war, from the 8th of October, okay, started launching, by this point, over 11,000 rockets into Israel. 96,000 people in northern Israel have been displaced. 10% of Israel's landmass has been depopulated, okay, 11 months deep. What is it exactly that you expect Israel to do? At this point, civilians are out of their homes, children are out of their mouth right now. What do you expect Israel to do in the final instance, where there is a precision strike on Hezbollah terrorists, okay? Hezbollah terrorists, the world wants to claim that this
God, give me a pro-Israel baddie. Lord, please give me a pro-Israel baddie.
It's national war crime. Like, what should Israel do? Just bend over and keep accepting it? None of these things are acceptable to you people. Targeted strikes.
I wish she would bend over and accept my cock.
Unacceptable. Pages unacceptable.
Don't clip that.
What is acceptable to stop these terrorists from persistently and belligerently attacking Israel? And to make the claim
I do again. It's just like the more like I think most of our points here are correct. I just hate like the anger filled like moral like intuition pumping. Like it's just
to make the claim that they are doing this on behalf of the Palestinians is absolutely outrageous. You want to say that, oh, we're fighting for the Palestinians.
No, it's just awkward link. Thank you. You're a role model in its dark time. Salam Ashtray, whose brother is held in Gaza, asked the minister to help save the woman in captivity. He said, although I know they might be torturing my brother in Gaza, the woman must be the ones as priority. Wow. Well, I guess it kind of is awkward like now.
Because of the occupation in this oppressive military state. What about Hezbollah's oppressive military state? What about Hezbollah's state within a state that has undermined Lebanon's sovereignty? What about the fact that Hezbollah goes to Syria and massacres people on behalf of Assad? What about the fact that Hezbollah goes to Iran and massacres, rapes innocent Iranians? So why don't we just say that everything that Israel's doing is in behalf of the innocent Iranians, the innocent Syrians, and the innocent Lebanese? You know why you don't say that? Because it sounds absolutely ridiculous. It is a red herring. It is a red herring to claim that Hezbollah is acting on behalf of Palestinians when what they're doing is exactly what they said in their charter, which the Islamic Republic created them for, which is to create a second Islamic Republic in Lebanon and to destroy Israel. That is their goals. It is time to be honest about that.
Okay.
Didn't hear a condemnation of Israel's war crimes there.
Oh, I absolutely did. What I said was that the jihadists are to blame by the laws of causal reasoning.
All right, let me bring in Aaron Maté.
I don't know what he exactly means by Israel's war crime in this context. What is this?
To free them from the cult. No, you don't understand. You don't understand, dude. No one here is suffering. We're here because we're suffering.
True.
Aaron, we are nearly a year into this war in Gaza. It now looks increasingly likely there might be another phase of this war erupting, or already has erupted, in Lebanon. The question I have wrestled with since October the 7th is not whether Israel has a right to defend itself if it's attacked, but what is the proportionate response which should be tolerated of a nation that comes under that attack. And that's setting aside the history of the conflict. When you are attacked as they were on October the 7th, you obviously have to fight back hard, particularly as Hamas said, we're going to keep doing this. If Hezbollah wants to respond to what happened on October the 7th by within hours, unleashing rockets at Israel and carrying on doing that for the next year, again, Israel has a right to defend itself. The question is, what is proportionate? Do you accept, first of all, Aaron, that Israel has a right, if not a duty, to its people to defend itself? And if you accept that, then what is proportionate? Who determines that?
Every state, including Israel, has the right to defend itself. But let's examine what that right entails. If we're talking about October 7th, when, yes, some Hamas militants committed atrocities, they're on camera. There was a claim before, by the way, that there was rape by Hamas. There actually isn't evidence for a single case of rape, even 1 year later. I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
I correct you there. I have seen.
Gray's don't be taking lots of Russian money. Probably did.
There has been widespread evidence.
Oh, like, see, like, just don't, like, they get the worst people over these panels, dude, like, because they go down to, like, where people actually raped rabbit hole, and it's like, it doesn't matter, it's not what I care about, it's not what I care about, it's not what I care about. Maybe no one was raped, okay? It's like, doesn't matter, doesn't matter. I don't care, like, it's such a, like, absolute deadweight loss of conversation.
Against women.
There hasn't, there actually hasn't. I'm going to finish my point. There's not a single shred of evidence for it, but we'll do that some other time. Listen, we're talking about October 7th. Israel has a right on October 7th to defend its people. Let me finish my... Piers, every time I come on here, I can't talk. Okay,
to be fair,
I didn't interrupt you.
Okay.
I didn't interrupt anybody.
Oh,
you say every time you come on here this happens, but you just started with an unbelievably inflammatory and incorrect statement, which is that there was no sexual abuse of women on October the 7th. There are multiple...
you know, okay, I guess we're going down this rabbit hole. Yeah, I don't like I haven't looked super far into it, but like, I'm pretty sure there are multiple like rescued hostages, or some of them weren't rescued, returned hostages who reported that they were, I don't know if they've used the term rape, but yeah, were sexually assaulted, and then like another big issue is a lot of the bodies were fucking burned on October 7th, so it's hard to know if people are raped when all the bodies were burned.
Multiple.
Right?
We'll debate that some other time.
It's a fact.
No, okay. There's not. Anyway, listen. If we're talking about October 7th, I'm going to finish my sentence.
Let him speak, please.
Okay, I didn't interrupt you. They said multiple inflammatory things. I didn't interrupt them. Thank you. If we're talking about on October 7th, yes.
Let him speak, please.
Thank you. If we're talking about on October 7th, yes, Israel has the right to defend its civilians if they're being attacked. Okay, but Israel is an occupying power, and it's been occupying power for decades. Occupiers don't have the right to defend their occupation. Israel doesn't have the right to fire a single bullet into Gaza. It has obligations. Occupiers have obligations, and if Israel wanted peace,
yeah, I understand what he's. We'll get to the fucking law of occupation eventually. Fuck, where did is it in this? I haven't gone down the full IHL rabbit hole on the law of occupation. We did this read this one paper. Can occupation resulting from a war or self-defense become illegal? I think their conclusion is basically no. But one, I would say Israel probably is not occupying Gaza. There's a blockade on Gaza, obviously, but I don't think that. Well, they are occupying Gaza now because they they're at war, right? Yeah, but post 2005, after they withdrew, prior to October 7th, I would say they probably weren't occupying Gaza. They had a blockade on Gaza. I don't think that amounts to a full-on occupation. And then secondly, fuck, we gotta go down the whole occupation law. I'm pretty sure Israel still... Fuck, I should remember this paper. I'm pretty sure Israel still has a right to do certain things even within an occupation. I'm pretty sure states have a right to do certain things within an occupation to protect their own civilians. State acting in lawful exercise of its right of self-defense may seize and occupy foreign territory. Israel's most passing threat is potential rocket attack from the state, West Bank. The severity of the threat has been proven by the violence from Gaza and after Israel withdrawal. However, the West Bank is closer to Israel's major population center. Rockets and missiles positioned throughout the West Bank. Since Israel also faces large security threats from non-state actors, it does have an interest in maintaining a military presence to avoid smuggling weapons, like of which occurs in the Gaza Strip. UN 242 also, that's, okay.
Peace and security, what it would do is join the entire world, join the International Court of Justice, which just ruled that Israel doesn't have the right to control a single inch of the West Bank or Gaza, and end the occupation, and address its decades-long attacks on Palestinians and also Lebanese, because, as was previously said, Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, killed tens of thousands of people, and that's why Hezbollah was formed. If Israel wanted genuine peace and security, and it wanted to defend itself, it would stop brutalizing other people. And this claim was made before. What was Israel supposed to do in response to its people being kidnapped? That's the logic of October 7th, because there are thousands of Palestinians who have been brutalized and kidnapped in Israeli dungeons. Hamas launched October 7th to free them. The difference between Israel and Hamas is that Hamas actually has an argument, because Hamas has tried, I didn't interrupt you. I did not interrupt you, please. Hamas has tried to accept the... You were actually. Hamas has tried to accept the global consensus of a two-state solution, a big compromise for Palestinians, accepting just 22% of their homeland in the West Bank and Gaza. Israel's refused to join the rest of the world in accepting that two-state solution. Even Iran has voiced time support for that. It's only Israel and the U.S. that insist on Israel's right to put Gaza under siege and steal Palestinian land in the West Bank, and that's why you have this continued escalation. Hezbollah intervened on October 8th because they wanted to show Israel that there would be costs for committing mass murder, which is what Israel has done, and that's why Hezbollah was involved. Hezbollah said from the start it would stop its rockets if Israel stopped committing mass murder. Israel, unfortunately, is more committed to mass murder because it insists on the right to control that entire land and not accept Palestinians as equal human beings. That's the fundamental problem here.
Okay, Fleur Hasan,
I don't know where to start. I really don't know where to start. First of all, he's talking about mass murder on October 8th. We were attacked on October 7th. We hadn't even gone in on October 8th. So I really don't understand what you're talking about. Secondly,
yeah, I don't even think they went in until like October 29th. I think is when they started doing ground operations. I think they started doing airstrikes pretty soon after that. I think either on October 9th or 10th, and maybe even on October 8th. But
the longest military occupation in the world.
Yes, well, let's go to that. In 2005, Israel left the Gaza Strip. Now, at that point, the Gazans could have done one of two things: turn it into a wonderful pilot for a Palestinian state, which you think they want, and I don't believe they actually do. And instead, they turned it into Mogadishu, into Beirut, as it were. Instead of investing in its people, they invested in tunnels to attack and to use their people as munitions. That's just a fact. Tell me, why did they not build a beautiful place in 2005 until today? You know why?
Okay, well, I hate the... I don't like the, again, like the fucking emotional, like, intuition following, like, stupid ass framing here. Why didn't they turn it into the Singapore of the Middle East? Okay, just do the passive precautions thing. Just do the you know, they were to rule the Gaza Strip for 16 years. It was clearly feasible for them to section off parts of the Gaza Strip for military purposes, but instead they did not do that. They instead invested millions of dollars in building tunnels. That's a failure in passive precautions, which reflects customary international law. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, do that.
Hamas came into power, and Hamas is not interested in a state. Hamas is interested in destroying the Jewish state, and that is the crux of the conflict. And you're on the wrong side of history. One day you're going to wake up and realize this. At the bottom line is that the conflict is not because there isn't a Palestinian state. The conflict is because there's a Jewish state that has never been accepted, and that's why in 1947 they didn't accept the partition plan, and that is why after Oslo in 2000 they didn't accept the two-state solution. We gave them 93% of the West Bank and the entire Gaza. That's why in 2009 an even more generous peace deal, and they didn't accept it. And the bottom line is this: they don't want a state. They want, and they're invested emotionally, logistically, and militarily in the destruction of the state of Israel. Israel wants to live in peace. We don't want to rule in other people.
Okay, but Fleur, let me ask you this. Hang on, please. Hang on, let me ask a question. Fleur, let me ask you a question.
Live side by side with Jews.
Fleur, here's what I don't get about what you've just said. Is that you talk about destruction and the threat of destruction. And I get that. Hamas is wedded to destroying Israel, as are Hezbollah.
It's in the charter.
Fine. But what is Israel doing right now in Gaza? You are destroying it. You're destroying Gaza, and you're killing tens of thousands of people in the process. But you are destroying Gaza in the most extraordinarily brutal manner. And you're going after... Let me finish, please. You're going after Hamas now in the very areas where you told the civilian population to go to. And in the process, you're killing a lot of innocent people. How can that be justified?
Hamas went into the humanitarian corridors because that's what they do. Exactly what Elica says. That is their modus operandi. They don't...
Yeah, I mean, like, they tell civilians to evacuate from the most dangerous areas, but they Like that does not imply. Yeah, I know. So that doesn't imply that every other area is a safe area. You just tell civilians to evacuate from the most dangerous areas, in order for them to go to at least theoretically safer areas.
Don't build tunnels under schools.
Well, if you know that, why do you send people to these specific areas?
We send them there. Is thinking that those areas are going to be areas we're not going to attack, and then Hamas throws rockets at us and attack our soldiers. Look, ultimately we want two things.
I mean, you should say like they're safer, or they don't. They don't attack those areas immediately. Usually they did the war in Gaza and are relatively like in phases, right? They told people in northern Gaza to evacuate, and then they invaded northern Gaza. They told people in central Gaza to evacuate, then they invaded central Gaza. Yeah, like safe zones require two sides to set up, right? Hamas won't agree to a safe zone because Hamas operates out of safe zones. Hamas operates out of refugee camps. Like Hamas operates out of these areas. An actual international recognized safe zone requires two people to set up.
We want the
Hamas doesn't seem to be willing to do that.
Threat to the state of Israel, and we want our hostages back. If that happens in an hour, it's over. If Hezbollah move north of the Litani in an hour, it's over. And both of you are in the wrong side of history here, because the Islamic Republic of Iran was the big puppet master of all of this. They've got much wider ambitions than Israel. They're going to be coming everywhere. They are the Hitler of the 1930s, and that is what we're facing. So you two can keep deluding yourself that this is about Israel, and what a coincidence, the only Jewish state in the world, and somehow we're the aggressors. You know what? Thousands of years we've heard the same libels that we're hearing right now. This is just another form of it, but we will survive, and we will prevail, because bigger people than the Islamic Republic of Iran, and bigger people than the enemies that we now face, have tried to destroy us, and we're still here.
Okay, Wajahat, I mean, look...
We should read this at some point, too. Let's mention it there for a little bit.
I have a lot of issues with what Israel is doing in Gaza. I have issues about the way they're rapidly escalating what they're doing in Lebanon. But I also have a massive issue with what Hamas represent and what they represent to Israelis and what Hezbollah represent, because they make no pretense. They want to destroy Israel. They want to get rid of Israel. And if you are Israel and you're an Israeli living in Israel, they represent an existential threat to your existence. What else is Israel supposed to do? Sit back and let these people destroy them, or defend themselves as best they can? I mean, that seems to me to be the crux of the Israeli side of this, which is, what else are they supposed to do?
So the Israeli side is de-escalation through escalation, perpetual war, occupation, put the boots on their neck, mow the lawn, destroy all of our terrorists, right? Okay, I get it.
Mow the lawn, mow the lawn, mow the lawn. How evil.
No, they invaded Lebanon in 1982. 15 to 20,000 people, mostly civilians, were killed. War crimes happened to the point where Ronald Reagan was so disgusted by what he saw, he picked up the phone and told him to stop it. Benjamin Netanyahu has yet again crossed another red line of Biden and said, I'm going to expand settlements, which are also illegal.
Which I think, which by the way, I think is completely disgraceful. I think the willful, deliberate expansion of the settlements during the past year is disgusting and should not be happening. And it's another reason for me why Netanyahu should not be leading Israel. I think he's just...
And also, the one thing for safety and security, right? Because I think you and me, and I think some people on this panel, want safety and security for Israelis, for Palestinians, for Muslims, for Christians, for the region.
The audio came back before the video. Yeah, I don't know what's happening, but...
It has always tried military solutions. They've always failed. I just give you a brief history. We can go back longer if we want. Military solutions have always failed. You know the one thing it has never tried? Ending the occupation. Giving Palestinians the right...
So, funny story, man. Funny story, man. Actually, I'm going to do the ultimate Hasbro here, okay? This is the ultimate Hasbro. You know, in 2005, Israel actually did withdraw from the Gaza Strip, and then they held elections, and then Hamas came to power, and Hamas just repeatedly launched rockets at Israel for a number of years. So, you know.
Right to self-determination. If it ends the occupation...
Okay, so I would say this. Wajahat, I would say... Hang on, don't all talk, please. Wajahat, hang on, let me handle this. Wajahat, here's what I would say to that. They did give Hamas the chance to show what they would do if they ran Gaza in 2005. And Hamas spent billions of dollars that was given to them on building a highly sophisticated tunnel network from which they could basically operate as a terrorist organization, which is wedded from their charter to destroying Israel. So they have had the chance of Israel. No, hang on. I would say this. I still believe that Israel has had a form of occupation since then over Gaza, because they've had the ability, as we saw at the start of the war, to turn off the power,
Piers Morgan. Oh, look, I'm streaming. That's crazy.
That is the behavior of an occupying force. But they did give Hamas the chance to show what they would do if they would govern. And I can't believe there is any Palestinian in Gaza that thinks that Hamas did anything but squander that opportunity in the most brazen and despicable manner, culminating in this outrageous attack last October, which was always going to goad Israel into this kind of response. If you go and kill 1,200 people in Israel in the manner they killed them and boast about it to the world for your GoPro cameras, actually showing what you're doing to women, children, to Holocaust survivors, you kidnap over 200 people, you're killing a newborn baby, for God's sake. If you do all that and you wound nearly 7,000 more, many of them irreparably, then you are going to get a massive response. Hamas knew that, and they knew that the casualties would be thousands of their own people. Why would you do that? Why do that? So I come back to, I have problems with everybody in this story, right? I really do.
Oh my God, now Piers is doing both sides of something. I have problems with, I mean, well, I guess that, I guess I agree, Piers Morgan. I have problems with everybody. It's just that, I think there's a bit of a difference between, like, Israel expanding settlements, which, like, is cringe, and they shouldn't be doing that. Based incentive build, and like, Hamas, which is purposefully targeting civilians. Those two things are a little different, but okay.
Agree with you.
But these are the issues. These are the issues on the Hamas Hezbollah side, which really
disproportionate. Go into that more.
If you're ready to destroy it,
terrorist groups. They're
let me bring in Elica.
So the entire arguments that are being made here are based on revisionist history. That's first things first. The even way that you frame Hezbollah as the victim, as the non-aggressor, to where you frame Israel as escalating despite Hezbollah's repeated history of aggression, okay? First of all, the way you even describe Hezbollah's inception is wrong. Let's talk about Hezbollah's inception, which was after the 1979 revolution. Let me finish. After the 1979 revolution in Iran, Hezbollah, okay, was inspired by this, and Assad visited Iran and asked Khomeini, what can we do for you? Khomeini said, give me a passage to Syria to Lebanon so I can export my radical ideologies over to Lebanon. They did that, and then they started killing the Shiite Muslims in the north of Lebanon while there was an invasion by Israel from the south. Why was there an invasion from the south? There was an invasion because the PLO were in southern Lebanon firing rockets into Israel after they just got expelled from Jordan because they were doing the same thing, hijacking planes, okay, landing them on revolutionary airports, blowing them up in front of international media. Then they go to southern Lebanon.
The grey zone guy is shaking his head a lot.
Political dynamics in southern Lebanon. Now you have the Christian Maronites and the Muslims fighting each other in the first Lebanon civil war, okay? They destroyed Lebanon from within just because of the desire to launch its rockets from Lebanon into Israel. Then it went up to Beirut and started fighting with the Christian Maronites to assert domination in Lebanon. Why? Because they are jihadists. And then what happens in 1978, which is the first invasion of Israel into Lebanon. Why? Because the PLO did an attack on a bus in Israel that killed 38 people. Israel goes in to try and take out the PLO, and then the UN requires them to retreat, and they retreat, and then they send their UN interim forces for Lebanon, okay, to take out the PLO. The UN runs away, and the PLO comes back, continues its attack, okay? The second invasion into Lebanon, because of the continued attacks, they go in once more, and because the PLO doesn't leave, they have to create this occupation, right? And then as soon as they remove the occupation,
he really did not like that.
Clinton, what happens is that Hezbollah advances to the border of Israel and starts attacking again, and then comes a UN resolution 17.
Is there a good book to read on? I mean, from what I've read, most of what she says here, it sounds pretty accurate and true, but I haven't read super far into the Lebanon wars.
One requiring not only that Hezbollah stays 10 kilometers back.
Is there a Betty Moore's book in it?
But also that all of these militias in Lebanon have to disband, and there can only be a militarized Lebanese government. Israel abided. Who did not abide? Hezbollah. Then what did Hezbollah do for 18 years? For 18 years in the zone that they were not allowed to be, they started expanding their military capacities up to 200,000 munitions, and then finally on October 8th started attacking. And then when Israel responded with that pager attack, why did they do that? Why did they do that? Because the commanders, the leaders of Hezbollah, had a plan to attack northern Galilee and do a second October 7th, kidnap hostages with a ground invasion. Now you tell me, what should Israel do?
Okay.
Well, wait, I haven't heard that before.
They do that. Why did they do that? Because the commanders, the leaders of Hezbollah, had a plan to attack northern Galilee and do a second October 7th, kidnap hostages with a ground invasion.
I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't heard of that before. Hezbollah plan to kidnap people from northern Galilee. Bullet chiefs were meeting to plan October 7th style invasion when killed. Oh wait, is this yeah, this is recently yeah, okay, that makes sense. President confirms terror group commanders slating Friday strike were set on horrendous rampage in North Lebanese sources say. They were meeting on planes for a ground invasion. President Isaac, who is this guy? Oh, the president of Israel. Okay. Top Hezbollah commanders that were bombed by Israel were planning an attack, like devastating. Yeah. Listen, considering Israel's intelligence on Hezbollah has been fucking insane so far, it would not surprise me if this were true.
Now you tell me, what should Israel do?
Okay.
Well,
President Israel's very limited powers. Yeah, I'm aware of that. That's why that's why I didn't recognize him. He's just a, head of state. He doesn't do that much, I'm aware. But, I mean, I'm assuming here he'd basically be quoting, like, intelligence agencies that have told him this stuff.
Okay, hang on. I'll go to Aaron. Let Aaron Maté respond to that. What Israel's supposed to do in that eventuality?
What Israel should do is, for the first time in its history, abandon its quest for regional domination and supremacy. Starting in 1947, just a brief tour through history. Yes, Israel accepted partition publicly. Palestinians didn't. It's not nice to welcome the partition of your land, which is being stolen by foreigners. But privately, Israeli leaders, including David Ben-Gurion, said, we won't accept partition.
The quote game. Let's play the quote game, everyone. Yep, let's bring up all these Hamas quotes. Hezbollah, no way.
Ourselves what our borders are. And that's why they proceeded to expel hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, including into Lebanon, creating the...
Yeah, I don't think I pronounced it correctly, but I don't care. I can't pronounce anything correctly, even in English. So I'm definitely not gonna pronounce. I forget how do you pronounce it the right way. Hezbollah.
this crisis. They refuse to address that. Instead of addressing their expulsion of Palestinians after their land, they've stolen more. In 1967. In 1982, the reason Israel invades Lebanon is because the PLO was there, and the PLO at that time was joining the rest of the world and accepting a compromise of a Palestinian state. Google the Arab Peace Initiative. It's been renewed many times to Israel. Israel's been offered by all the Arab states and the PLO, with even Iran joining them accepting this. Everybody recognizing Israel, everybody making peace in exchange for Israel ending its occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. That's a major compromise for Palestinians. Israel is so hell-bent on domination, occupation, and supremacy, it's refused even to accept a Palestinian compromise. When Hamas tried to join that after 2005 when Israel withdrew, Israel still put Gaza under a complete siege, prevented any basic goods from getting in, carried out routine massacres. Even when Hamas leaders, including Ismail Haniyeh, who Israel recently killed, said,
"Don't you know they banned cookies? They banned cookies. Say it. Say the cookies."
Israel will not accept it because Israel wants to dominate that region. That's the fundamental problem here. It was previously said, as long as Israel insists on supremacy and occupation, people are going to resist it. People will resist it. It's true. Google the Arab Peace Initiative, 2002. Google it.
2000. What happened?
Is he talking about the Quartet Agreement? It wasn't that that was the Quartet Arab Peace Initiative 2002. Wasn't this the Arab Peace? I think another Quartet in the Middle East. Is this what I'm? The group was established in Madrid in 2002, calling to. Are these the same thing?
With the Clinton parameters, 2001.
I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened. The former Israeli foreign minister, Shlomo Ben-Ami, who was there at Camp David, do you know what he said? He was there at Camp David. This is the foreign minister who made the Camp David.
Yep, quote Ben-Ami. Quote Ben-Ami.
He said, if I were Palestinian, I would have rejected Camp David as well.
There we go. There we go. Oh.
Why? Because he recognized that Israel insisted on keeping the major West Bank settlement blocks that make a Palestinian state impossible.
Yeah, there's nothing else in that book that goes over all the failures of the Arabs at Camp David as well. Yep, that's definitely, he's not taking that quote out of context. Oh. He definitely just wasn't saying that, like, the conditions weren't right for fucking Palestinians to be able to accept that deal at the time. He wasn't saying that. He wasn't, like, saying that was a bad deal. Oh, my God.
That's
from Scars of War,
right? You don't see Palestinians as equal human beings, and you reserve the right to steal their land, and that's why you're interrupting me, because you can't handle the truth. That's a problem here. Stop being a supremacist, stop stealing land, and you can have peace.
Here's, let's go to 2024. Can I just say one quick thing?
Okay, let me bring in Wajahat, please.
Just one quick thing. Let's go to 2024. Let's just go to this year.
Yes.
Who has rejected 2 states? Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Who has crossed every single one of President Biden's lines? Netanyahu. Who has said he's going to continue occupying the West Bank? Netanyahu. Who has said he's going to continue expanding settlements? Netanyahu. Who has put the worst, most extreme, radical, right-wing members of the Jewish public in his cabinet? People like Ben Gvir and Smotrich are openly genocidal. Prime Minister Netanyahu. Who has continued bombing civilians, like you mentioned, Piers, right? Told these Palestinians to go to the south, it's a safe zone, and bomb that safe zone? Netanyahu. There has been a peace deal.
Oh, that safe zone.
Announced it in the summer. He said it was Israel's.
I thought it was in Scars of War. It's not in Scars of War.
He said ceasefire, return of hostages, humanitarian aid. Who has rejected it since June? Netanyahu. Who is protesting Netanyahu? The family members of the hostages, because they realize he does not care. He does not care. And who is actually protesting this war in Lebanon? The family members of the hostages, because they realize if this war, God forbid, expands, it means that their family members won't come back. When there was a temporary ceasefire in November, 105 Israeli hostages came back. Since then, less than 10. And when all is said and done, Piers, most likely Israel will have accidentally killed more of its Israeli hostages through this war than it has saved. So the buck is right now with Netanyahu. And as we have discussed on your show, he's a corrupt criminal.
Does he think that? I'm so confused. Like, what do you think he's proving when he's saying that? Like, Israel would have killed, or I mean, he even used the word accidentally killed more of its own hostages than it successfully returned. What does he think? Like, what does he think he's proving when he says that? I never get what people think that they're proving. Like, at best, you're proving what Israel's military is incompetent. Like, maybe you can make that argument, but like, that's really the only thing you can like prove that. I don't understand like what moral implication he's trying to throw on Israel there. Like, clearly it's morally justified to try to get your own hostages back. Obviously, you might end up accidentally killing some of them when the enemy is using them as fucking human shields. Like,
who has 80% of the public against him, mass protests, and he realizes if the war ends, he will have to resign, the government will fall apart, and he will most likely go to jail. So war we have. De-escalation through escalation. It's a recipe for genocidal madness.
I have a question for you. That's actually a very important question. You're saying that this 2-state solution should be accepted, okay? We've seen through this history of the occupation of the West Bank, first of all, the occupation has spoiled at least 500 terrorist attacks in 2022. Now, before the Second Intifada, there were actually no checkpoints, okay? There were no checkpoints. And then after the Palestinians rejected the Camp David summit, which actually offered to remove the entire occupation, the settlements offered 2 states, okay?
That's such a lie. Even Israeli leaders don't say that. Even Israeli leaders don't. You're lying through your teeth. And there were checkpoints too, by the way.
You don't interrupt. After that, there was a second intifada. There was a second intifada that killed over 1,000 Israelis in Tel Aviv, and then the checkpoints were installed. Okay, so my question to you is that you want to end the occupation. Everyone wants to end the occupation. What is happening? In fact, one of those proposals was that the PLO would help to foil terrorist attacks going into Israel. You know why that's so important? Because of the topography of the land, where the West Bank is on a higher plane, okay, which is strategically at an advantage to throw rockets into Israel. And so Israel asked the PLO to collaborate with the Shin Bet to prevent those terrorist attacks happening. Now, you want a two-state solution. Let me ask you, from the jihadist perspective, where is their commitment to stop the terrorism if the occupation is removed, just like it was removed from Gaza, and then instantly Hamas started firing rockets back into Israel?
Yeah, you see, okay, let me put that to Wajahat, because I think it's a reasonable question, because even if Israel did everything that you urge them to do, you're still left with Hamas and Hezbollah, two terror groups who are wedded via their charters, explicitly stated.
He thinks they only exist because of the evil power imbalance and occupation.
Cases, but they are wedded to the
Arabs can only be evil if there's a power imbalance. But I think who is it that said, God, I forget it might have been Omar even. I remember watching a thing that was like some guy said, people like to play this game of what would Hamas do if they had a power. If Hamas had power, they wouldn't exist. So like Arabs can only be evil if they don't have power, but like Jews are allowed to be evil no matter what. Arabs can only be evil as a result of repression, but Jews can be evil no matter what. What's up, Malibu County? Have you ever watched this on stream? The Israeli reservists refusing to fight in Gaza? I don't think so.
Eradication of Israel. Nothing changes just because Israel decides to say, we end the occupation, we end this, we end that, we give you everything you want. It's not going to change the ideology of people that want to destroy them, is it? Or is it? Hamas and Hezbollah suddenly going to go, you know what? Thanks very much. We're now going to have peace. Makes no sense.
It's a good question. It's a good question.
They're living in La La Land.
Ending the occupation. I've always tried to answer in good faith. Ending the occupation will be the game changer. Giving people freedom will be a game changer. Every single person on earth that has ever been occupied has resisted the occupation. As you have seen. Look, they first went after PLO. PLO got weakened. Then Hezbollah came. Suppose they destroy Hezbollah, which they won't. Suppose they'll destroy Hamas. It's been a year. They won't. It's the idea of a resistance. And I agree with you. They're acting in a way which is terroristic and also commits war crimes. The idea will persist as long as you keep occupying. The one thing Israel has never done is stop the occupation. And number two, throughout its entire history, especially from after Oslo, you know what's it's increased? Illegal settlements in the West Bank. What's the excuse? Hamas doesn't run the West Bank. It is expanding the West Bank settlements. And for those who don't know, imagine like Swiss cheese, right? There's holes in the Swiss cheese. The holes are the settlements expanding. What's left is this barely, you've seen this, Piers, you know the map, this pathetic small piece of land that's left for the Palestinians. So no matter what happens, I'm sorry to say this, Palestinians are screwed. Yet still they say, fine, give us this pathetic moth-eaten ridden land because you have expanded the settlements. We'll still take it. Give us freedom. At the end of the day, every single group on earth wants freedom. And that's the one thing Israel refuses to do.
Okay, let me bring in Fleur here. Let me bring in Fleur. Right, I want to ask you this, Fleur. You can respond, but I want to ask you this. Why should Palestinians not be afforded the exact same human rights as Israelis?
They want their land, or do they want to be part of Israel? That's my question to you.
No, I've asked you a question. Why should they not? Why should they not, in principle?
Do they want their own state? My question is,
Fleur, answer the question. Why should they not be entitled to the same human rights that you have and that I have?
They should.
But they don't have them.
Well, one second. Let's talk about Oslo, because we're talking as if Israel hadn't tried 5 times already to create a state. That's how we're talking here. So what happened in Oslo? In Oslo, Judea and Samaria. Okay, 1 second, in Judea and Samaria was split into area A, B, and C.
Judea and Samaria. Now she's doing the ultra Zionist phrasing here.
The majority of the Palestinian population live are in area A's and B. The areas that we're talking about, really about Swiss cheese and all these metaphors that you all like to use, is area C, where the least amount of Palestinians live. Now, if they really wanted autonomy, and Tony Blair,
I mean that's true, but it also it prevents the continuous Palestinian state is the issue. It's kind of hard to have a state where you need bypass roads and it's not continuous. That's the issue. Like the issue isn't necessarily even like taking where a lot of land where a lot of Palestinians live. The issue is that it prevents a continuous state from forming.
Was here for about 10 years trying to create state institutions, and he failed. Why did he fail?
Contiguous? Continuous or I forgot how to pronounce it.
Murderous terrorist groups, or you have corruption. Why did Khania have $4 billion? Why does Mahmoud Abbas have private jets? Why are his sons billionaires? Why?
Contiguous.
Because all of the money that the West has given these entities, these government entities, to create a state, to start creating state institutions, to do better for their people, to create an economy, all of that has gone into the pocket. So what do we have? We have a Palestinian leadership which is either believes in the destruction of the state of Israel, or the ones who don't, they just steal. So what are you left with? I really want a Palestinian Mandela. I really want a Palestinian Gandhi. I want to live in peace. I don't want to rule in other people, and nobody in Israel does. But what do we get every time we try to give a territorial compromise? We get terror cells and murder. What happened after the 2000 Oslo deal? What happened? What happened was
really does not like this.
With thousands of people, Jews and Arabs, in the city of Jerusalem, in my city, dead on the street, terrorism in cafes and in buses. Why did that happen? If the terms weren't great, then why didn't Arafat continue negotiating? And I'll tell you this, and I'll repeat it again, because the problem of this conflict is not that a Palestinian state doesn't exist. It's that a Jewish state exists, and they've never, ever ideologically accepted it. And why do I know? Because they keep telling me. Because they have charters. Because that's their constitution. And that's the educational system. And that's the media. Enough with Google. Don't you read anything else?
All right, listen.
Yeah, Google Arab League Peace Initiative.
Okay, listen.
Google Arab League. That's the Arab League office.
Hang on,
oh my God.
If you want to talk about Palestinian Mandelas, if you want to talk about Palestinian Mandelas, they exist. For example, in March 2018, thousands of Palestinian Mandelas marched peacefully in Gaza in the Great March of Return, calling for their basic rights.
Yep, that's exactly exactly what happened. There were no, Hamas did not try to co-opt that at all. There were definitely not Hamas operatives there that were trying to tear down the Gaza fence, and War was not openly stating that his goal was to breach the Gaza border wall. Like,
what did Israel do? It gunned them down with snipers, maiming people,
they were
paralyzing
Hamas
them. That's the Palestinian Mandela. They're people of Gaza who've been besieged.
There were people launching incendiary balloons above the fence, like lighting Israeli homes on fire.
Are you saying a Palestinian Mandela in Hamas? Have you ever been to Gaza? Honestly, you people are talking like
yes, I have been to Gaza. Yes, I have.
Okay, sure.
I have been to Gaza, actually. And I've met people there.
Lucky you're not a woman, then.
They've never been given the chance. Okay, can I talk now?
Oh, no, they've never been given the chance. 2005 never gave them that chance. Stop infantilizing the Palestinian leadership and the people.
I'm going to talk now. I'm going to speak now. You've had your time to speak your propaganda. I'll say it again. Israel has never accepted the fundamental premise that Palestinians have the right to self-determination. That's why it rejected multiple Arab League peace offers endorsed by Iran and Hamas, and members of Hamas, not all of them, but some of the leadership, including Ismail Haniyeh, calling for a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. That's a big compromise for Palestinians. That's just 22% of the land that you stole, which they're willing to accept. But Israel is so held.
That's a big conflict. 22%. Does he mean all of the land of Israel?
Bent on occupying and stealing land. It won't even accept the Palestinians.
What's up, Poland? Welcome back. Who's predicted to win this election? It's really close right now. It's basically 50-50.
Surrender. You don't want a Palestinian Mandela. You want to keep subjugating Palestinians.
What are you talking about? You're living in your own planet, where Islamic fundamentalism does not exist in your planet.
You're the fundamentalist.
Where are you living?
You're the fundamentalist.
Okay, time out. I think, hang on. We've reached a point when all four of you are trying to talk at the same time. That probably seems to me a good moment to bring this to an end. I have to say, I've done a lot of debates on this in the last year. This has been one of the best, because I honestly believe that all of you are coming at this from your own perspectives. You're passionate, you're articulate about it, you care, and ultimately we all want the same thing, which is peace. But I appreciate you all coming together today and debating it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I mean, I guess it wasn't as insane as it could have been. If you want to chat with me live, sub here or go to Nonfon 420 on Twitch or Kick via the links below. Once again, please like and sub to help with the algorithm, and consider sending a donation through YouTube Super Thanks to directly support me, and I'll make sure to reply to any question you ask. See you guys next time.